Okay, so are you ready for some more cowboy or going cowboy crazy? Of course you are. So we're going to start over here in a conversation between um, Burl and Slate. Now, Burl is the father to the twins, and Slate is the one that's caught between two twins, if you will. But we'll start here. Hey, coach, one of the defensive ends pointed at the stands. Burl Scroggs says he wants to talk with you. Slate glanced over at the huge, angry looking man who leaned on the purple railing. Great. This was just what he needed. He handed his clipboard to Travis and walked across the field, trying his damnedest to keep a smile on his face as he climbed up the steps to where Burl stood. Once he was standing next to the man, Slate didn't beat around the bush. So, you are here to whoop my butt? I'd like to. I can sure tell you that, Burl's fist clenched as he stepped away from the railing. Well, I know how you feel. Slate took a seat on the lower bench. I wasn't real happy about you barging in this morning and upsetting Faith. A blush ran up from his collar to the Burl's work shirt. Is she okay? Okay? Was not the right word, but since he couldn't think of the word to describe Faith's transformation, he ignored the question. I don't blame her for being upset. Burl sat down and studied his huge calloused hands. Me and Jenna made a mistake giving that girl away. So why'd you do it? He lifted his head and stared out at the field. The only person we need to explain that to is Faith. He paused. She ever let us if she ever lets us explain. Well, good luck with that, Burl. Slate rested his elbows on the bleacher behind him, even though his entire body was pulled as tight as a cramping hamstring. After this morning, it doesn't look like she's going to talk to any of us, which means the best thing we can do for her is to convince Sheriff Winslow that she's not Hope so she can get her car back and leave. Except just thinking about her leaving made his chest hurt. Well, me and Jenna don't see it the same way as you. That came as no surprise. It seemed no one in the town saw the things the way he did, and he was getting pretty damn sick and tired of it. Maybe he shouldn't wait to get fired for not winning the state championship. Maybe he should just resign as soon as the season was over and head someplace that wasn't populated with a bunch of crazy yahoos. So how do you how do you see things, Burl? He asked. We think Faith needs to stay here. Learn about her people. Once she gets to know us, it'll be easier for her to forgive me and Jenna and accept us as her family. Accept you as her family? Slate's fingers tightened around the cold aluminum steel of the bench. Why would she want to do that when you never did accept her? Burl glared back over his shoulder. It had nothing to do with accepting her. We loved her from the first moment we saw her. He snorted. Damn, Burl, you sure have a funny way of showing it. And now you think by keeping her here against her will that she's going to forgive and forget. It couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt, Slate set up. The woman is spitting mad at you for giving her up at birth, and for me for not mentioning that I dated her sister. What do you think is going to happen if she finds out we're in cahoots with Winslow? You think she's going to make her like us, Burl? Well, she doesn't have to find out. It's not like we made Sam take the car. Hell, Jenna and me, we weren't even in town. You do realize that this town's plan to keep Faith, who they think is Hope, here until she marries me. Yeah, we figured as much. Harley's already organizing a painting committee for the town hall, pulling the pig centerpieces out of the boxes. 2 months. If Slate could only hang on for 2 months, he would be in the Mexican paradise far, far away from all this craziness. Look, Slate, Burl turned to him. I'm not asking you to lie. All I'm asking you to do is that you don't talk to Sam until Faith has had some time to get to know us. We're not bad people. We were just doing what we thought was best. There was possibly some truth to that. People in this town were always screwing things up by doing what they thought was best. Besides, it was hard to stay mad at a man who looked as whipped as Burl Scroggs. Slate might not think there was a chance in hell that his plan would work, but he couldn't fault the man for wanting to try, for wanting a chance to make things right. Slate sure wanted that chance. Releasing his breath, Slate got free to his feet. A week, that's all I'm giving you. That's enough. Didn't seem like enough to Slate, not with a glare. Faith had shot him this afternoon, but stranger things had happened, especially in the town of Bramble. Hey, Coach, Travis yelled. You ready to call it a day? Oh, yeah, he was more than ready to call it a day. Okay, we're starting at page 161. Okay, so uh, we're now moving forward to where um, Faith is, I think this is where she's at the honky tonk, and she's getting ready to dance with Travis. Frozen on Travis's hand that had just encircled Faith's waist, the sight seemed to get him moving, just not in the right direction. His feet ate up the floor as he crossed the room, jumped up on the dance floor, skirted around from the long lines of dancing fools, and grabbed Travis's arm. "Thanks for warming her up for me, Trav." From the surprised look on Travis's face, Slade had probably used a little more force than was necessary to move him away from Faith, but he didn't care. "Sure, Slate." Travis backed away. "Any time." Slate tucked a hand around Faith's waist and pulled her from the line of men and over to the one tiny corner of the floor. She tried to jerk away. "Just what do you think you're doing?" "What am I doing?" he hissed. "What the hell are you doing? Matthew and Tommy Lee and now Travis? Have you lost your mind, woman?" "Hey, Hope," Twyla did a grapevine in front of them. "Don't forget your appointment on Friday at 4. I scheduled you for last because I got big plans for that hair of yours. I can hardly wait." Faith gushed as Twyla did a stomp kick and swirled away. Slate's mouth dropped open. "Where did you get that?" "What?" She glared at him. He waved a finger in front of her mouth. "That country twang." Even in the dark bar, he could see her blush. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You have lost your mind." "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not ridiculous. That accent is ridiculous." "I don't know why. It's exactly how you sound." "I do not sound like that." His voice rose enough to cause all the lines on the floor to pause in mid-boot scoot and stare at him. He made an attempt at an indifferent smile, but it must have fallen short because their eyes widened. "Come on." Slate pulled Faith off the dance floor toward the small hallway that led to the bathroom. Once there, he sandwiched her between the payphone and the door to the men's room. "So explain yourself." "Me?" She shoved against his chest. "I'm not the one who needs to explain anything." "Really? So I guess all these stories I've been hearing are a bunch of lies, and that fake accent I just witnessed was all my imagination." She stopped struggling, and her face flushed even brighter. "So it's true." His hands dropped from her arms. "You were running around pretending to be Hope." She smirked. "Not exactly." It was the same wording that he used when she asked him about the relationship with Hope, and he didn't believe for a second that it was only a coincidence. "Hey, Slade. Hey, Hope." Emmy Lee and her little sister scooted past them on their way to the women's bathroom. "Glad to see you two lovebirds are back together." They giggled as the door marked "Cowgirls" closed behind them. Slate cringed as Faith's eyes narrowed, but before she let loose with a four-letter word that set his teeth on edge, he reached out and shoved her into the men's bathroom and pushed her inside. "What are you doing?" "I'm giving us some privacy." He slammed the latch home before he turned and rested back against the door. Those wide blue eyes darted around the room, hesitating on the urinal before bouncing back to him. "Open that door." He crossed his arms. "Nope. Not until we had some time to talk." "I don't want to talk with you." Crossing her arms, she mimicked his stance, but the effect wasn't quite the same. He didn't have the womanly efforts to deal with. "Well, darling, you might as well talk to me because you're not getting out of here until you do." Her arms dropped to her sides, and she took 2 steps closer until that cute nose was inches away from his chest. "So talk, darling. Nobody's stopping you." The fake accent grated on his nerves worse than any pig calling Hope had ever done, and he gritted his teeth and pushed back away from the door, forcing Faith to take a step back. "First, stop talking like that." "Like what?" The accent was twice as thick. "Like a bad Dolly Parton impersonator." Faith smiled up at him and batted her eyes. "Second, what the hell do you think you're parading around like Hope, spouting off all these kinds of nonsense about having sex with Hollywood movie stars?" Her lips pressed together, lips that were coated with glittery pink stuff, and he figured she was about to give him a smart butt reply. Instead, she surprised him. The stiffness melted from her shoulders as she drooped back against the counter of the sink. "I figured if I couldn't beat them, I'd join 'em. But I may have overdone it a little." "A little?" Slate shook his head. Darlin', if half of what I heard tonight is true, you more than overdid it. You dug a hole so deep you've got 1 foot in China. Well, what did you expect me to do? Her hands flailed around, missing his chest by mere inches. I tried telling the truth, and no one paid the least bit of attention to me. And those women started asking me all these stupid questions about Hollywood, and after Shirlene's margaritas, I just started talking, and before I knew it, I had had boom boom with half the movie stars in Hollywood. It was a relief to see the angry, hostile Faith replaced with a cute, insecure Faith, especially when he thought he lost that woman for good. He took a step closer and grinned. But did you have to boom boom with midgets? Her hands hung in midair as she looked up at him. Midgets? Ah, no midgets, I take it. I figured that was probably an exaggeration, along with the whole problem at Taco Bell thing. Yes, I'm not going to say what the book says. Her gaze dropped to the toes of his boots. Well, actually, heat filled the and when he spoke, his voice hit a note that it hadn't hit since 6th grade. You came up with that one? Her head lifted, her face flushed as his body felt. Dang, he never had realized how hot the little bathroom was, mainly because he'd never been in there long enough to notice, and because he never shared it with a woman with hair that was so cute and needing some fresh air. He glanced at the wine window to right at the sink. Unfortunately, it was painted shut. Well, Slate cleared his throat. It sounded like you had quite an afternoon. He looked around, desperately searching for something to say to get his mind off the taco grande. So you're staying with Shirlene? Faith blinked at the quick subject change. Yes. He nodded. Good. She'll treat you right, although Shirlene has been known to have a wild streak a mile long, so you might want to keep that in mind when she makes suggestions like line dancing at a country honky-tonk with a bunch of rowdy cowboys. Her face scrunched up in confusion. Of course. She was no more confused over his words than he was. What was he doing? He had been handed the perfect opportunity to set things straight between them, and here he was rattling off some pathetic, jealous loser. Unfortunately, she turned mean before he could rectify the situation. Better than hanging out with two-timing jerk who couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. He pointed a finger at her. Now wait 1 dang minute. I never lied to you. You never lied to me? Those blue eyes snapped as she poked him in the chest with her finger. Are you kidding? You've done nothing but lie to me since the moment I met you. You lied to me about your car. You lied to me about where you live. You lied to me about the truck you drive. And you lied to me about your sister. She balled up her fist and thumped him hard in the chest. I'll give you the car, but I didn't lie about anything else. I do live in Bubba's trailers, at least for the time being. And you never asked about the truck, and I haven't lied about Hope. Those blue eyes narrowed, and before she could let loose at more accusations, he held up a hand. But you're right, I should have explained things to you before he stopped, not sure what to use. Before we had boom boom, she stated. It wasn't exactly the right phrase, but since he didn't have a better one, he let it slide. Yes, I should have explained things before we had boom boom. But things got out of hand. Got out of hand? That wasn't right either, but he forged on. You know, in the heat of the moment, people forget things. Those eyes narrowed, like the relationship between their past lovers and their present. No, Slate suddenly felt like a man drowning in his own damn swimming pool. I told you, Hope and I were never lovers. We were just friends. Just friends. Then why does this town think otherwise? Slate could have gone into reasons for not setting the town straight, but he didn't want to come off as arrogant, selfish idiot, even if that was what he was. No, it was better to keep things simple. They probably think that because we dated in high school. Faith's eyes darkened. But I thought you said you were just friends. So much for simple. He ran a hand over the back of his neck, squelching the desire to put a fist through the glass of the window so he could get some friggin' air. We were friends who dated. I see, she said, except it didn't sound like she saw what Slate saw. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we were sort of friend dating. Friend dating? You know, two friends going to the movies and high school dances in Sutter Springs. Her eyes widened. You took Hope to Sutter Springs? Oh, crap. Well, not for what you think I did, darling. Hope and I just hung out there and drank beer and howled at the moon. And kissed. He couldn't stop but the telltale blush. The slap she gave him rang his bell. You expletive. She tried to hit him again, but he grabbed her wrist. Of course, it didn't stop her mouth. How could you do that to me, to both of us? Or are you one of those beer-swinging jocks who likes a little twin action? Her other hand cracked him across the opposite cheek. Pervert. Damn it, Faith, he grabbed her hand, and it's not like that at all. She stopped struggling. Then what is it like, Slate? With his breath chugging in and out of his chest and his cheeks burning, his brain refused to give him an explanation that would fix this mess it had gotten him into, so he gave up on it altogether. It's like this. He jerked her up off of the toes of her little red boots, and to find out what happens next, you got to read the book. Going further. Okay, page 176. Faith shook her head. I don't want to keep you. I realize that you just got off work and it's close to dinner time. Oh, shoot, Jenna swatted the air. You ain't keeping me. Tonight's bowling night, and I usually just eat whatever's in the fridge and watch daytime shows that I TiVo. Are you hungry? I've got leftover chicken and dumplings. Really, I can't stay. I just stopped by to see if you had Hope's address. Oh, her face fell and she let the screen door slam. I guess you're in a hurry to get to California. Without waiting for a reply, she continued, I figured your mama told you where to start looking. Faith nodded. But she didn't tell you about me. It was a statement rather than a question, so Faith didn't acknowledge it as Jenna moved over to the railing and ran around the deep porch. Me and Burl must have really surprised you the other day. You could say that. Standing mere feet from the woman, Faith still felt surprised and angry. I'm sorry, Jenna studied the brightly colored mums that bordered the porch. If I'd known you was with Slate instead of Hope, I never would have barged in like that. So you would have gone on pretending you weren't my mother. Faith knew that she was being cruel, but she couldn't help it. She thought she had her emotions under control. Obviously not. Although the pain-filled brown eyes that stared back at her didn't exactly make her feel good about it, the snide remark. Maybe that would have been for the best. Maybe. She turned away, needing some distance between her and the petite woman who brought out the worst in her. She stared out past the yard wide open field on the other side, wishing she'd never come to Jenna's or to Bramble. There was a squeak and rattle of the chain. She glanced up to see Jenna take a seat on the faded cushion of the porch swing. But I guess it's too late to go back, she said, more to herself than to Faith. Of course, even if I could go back, I'd still be a young, stupid 15-year-old and probably make all the same mistakes. 15? You were only 15? Faith moved closer to the porch. Jenna nodded, sent a weak smile at the swing, creaked back and forth. 15 and in love, a dangerous combination. Faith tried to conjure up an image of herself at 15, a short, skinny kid with acne on her chin and braces on her teeth, a scared, insecure ninth grader who refused to use the school bathroom because of the fungus she might catch or kiss boys because of the germs. Pregnant? It was too mind-boggling even to consider. How old was Burl? She asked. 17. 17. It wasn't much better. She climbed the steps, but how? I guess I'm wondering why you didn't just get an abortion. We talked about it. Both me and Burl, we raised Christian, and I didn't seem right, so we decided to put the baby up for adoption. Baby? We didn't realize I was going to have twins. The ultrasound didn't show that. Never had one back then. It was such a big deal, and Doc Matthews isn't one to spend a lot of time with prenatal nonsense, so we were pretty surprised when 2 came out instead of 1. So why didn't you put us both up for adoption? Jenna's eyes welled with tears. I guess that's because after I held both of you, I didn't want to let you go. Of course, I couldn't keep both of you, not when your mama was there waiting for the baby I promised her. But the other one, she shrugged, well, me and Burl just figured it was fate, that God wanted us to keep one. A tight knot formed in Faith's chest, but why me? It was a question that had plagued her for the last few days, a question that she wanted to ask, but she hadn't wanted to ask, but needed to. Jenna released a deep sigh. Both Burl's parents and mine were poor, so we knew how hard life could be without money, and since we were both so young, unmarried, and still in high school, I figured our lives together wouldn't be much better, so I wanted to choose the strongest one, the one that would survive all hardships ahead. Hope came out first, all red-faced and squalling to beat the band, while you came out soft and sweet. I figured the oldest and loudest would survive the best. She looked down at her folded hands as tears splashed over her knuckles. I guess it wasn't the best way to decide, but it was the only way I knew how. A tear traced down Faith's cheek, and she quickly brushed it away before she turned and placed her hands on the porch railing. The anger was gone, but the hurt was remaining. Even if Jenna's decision made sense, it still was hard to accept the fact that she was the one given away. I was so sorry to hear about your mama, Jenna whispered. Was she a good one? Faith nodded, afraid if she opened her mouth she'd end up squalling to beat the band. That's good. Even though I helped pick out your parents, I still worried about that. Even though although she was a better mother than I was, when she found out I had twins, she wanted to adopt you both. So her mother had known mom was kept by her biological so her mother had known Hope was kept by her biological parents. Faith should have been angry about the deception, but all she felt was sorrow. Sorrow for the teenage mother burdened with adult decisions, and sorrow for the adoptive mom who only wanted to protect her child from the painful truth. Fighting back her tears, she allowed her gaze to wander around the yard that was so different from the one she grew up in. And not different in a bad way, just different. Maybe it was been fate that two children were born instead of one. Fate that Faith didn't cry and Hope did. Fate that Faith grew up in a small brick house with no siblings, and Hope grew up here with 3. And fate that her search led her to Bramble instead of Los Angeles, where she might have never gotten to meet the people who made this difficult decision. Good Lord, would you look at me? The porch swing creaked as Jenna got up. Sweeping her tears away, Faith turned and watched as Jenna pulled the disinfectant wipe from the porch and dabbed her eyes. She lifted a hand to stop her, but then let it drop. At least it hadn't put it in her mouth. I probably should be going, Faith said. Jenna's face fell, but she quickly recovered and waved a hand. And here I am yammering my fool head off, something I do when I get nervous. Faith smiled. So do you have Hope's address? I wish I could help you out with that, honey. I really do. But she moved into a new apartment. I keep forgetting to get it when she calls. Of course, once we get to gossiping, everything goes straight out the window. How long has it been since you talked? Just a little over a week. She usually calls on Sundays, but this past Sunday we were in Lubbock visiting Jenna J. So you haven't told her about me? Jenna's eyes flickered down to the toes of her boots. No, but I'm going to. I should have told her a long time ago. She looked back up, and her eyes were sad and sincere. It wasn't fair to either one of you. It wasn't fair, but if Faith had learned anything in the last few months, it was just how unfair life could be. Say, Jenna said, her face suddenly hopeful, why don't you come back on Sunday and have Sunday dinner with us? That way you can be right here when Hope calls. Besides, Dallas is supposed to come home from Austin, and I could try to get Tessa and Jenna to come back too. That way you would get to meet your brother and sisters before you head out to Hope's. She had months to get used to the idea of having a sister, and only days to get used to having a big family. Still, she wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to meet her siblings. I guess I could stop by for a little while, Faith conceded. Jenna beamed. Good, and besides, it will probably be best to give Hope a heads up before you show up at the doorstep. She don't really like surprises, Faith finished for her. Jenna grinned sheepishly. Pretty much. I just hope no one in town lets it slip before I talk with her. I don't think you have anything to worry about, not when the entire town is convinced I'm Hope. Jenna laughed, and the sound was so familiar it was creepy. Bramble is pretty close-minded, but I have to admit you two do look like 2 peas in a pod. But you knew. Jenna's eyes grew misty again. Yes, I knew. It took Faith a while before she could pull her gaze away from those soulful brown eyes. Well, I better get going, she said, but before she had taken more than 2 steps, Jenna stopped her. Faith? The word slipped her mother's lips like a prayer. Thank you for letting me tell my side of things. It felt really good to get it out. Faith nodded. She hadn't forgiven Jenna or Burl for giving her away. But at least now she knew why they had, and Jenna was right. It did feel good to get it all out. So I'll see you Sunday, Jenna chirped happily as she followed Faith down the steps. Of course, I'll probably see you even sooner than that. When Faith shot a questioning look, she continued, Homecoming is this weekend. And you're planning on going, aren't you? After all, you and Brambles are prettiest queen, she teased. Unfortunately, Faith didn't see the humor in the joke. She had forgotten about the homecoming, or maybe she shoved it out of her mind, along with the Hollywood boom lies and kissing cocky cowboys in the men's restroom. If she stayed until Sunday, there was no way she could miss the festivities, not with the way this town felt about their Hope, and not the way that Faith felt responsible for the cups and the plates. And that's all I have marked for Katie Lane's Going Cowboy Crazy, because I want you to find out on your own, did Hope show back up and find out that her sister Faith, that she didn't know was even she had a twin, was parading around as her? And does Hope marry Slate? Does Faith end up leaving town, going back to Chicago once Hope comes to town? So many questions. The only way to find out is to read this excellent book, which was Going Cowboy Crazy. If you're lucky enough to find this book, the two great novels have Going Cowboy Crazy and Make Mine a Bad Cowboy, or Bad Boy, which we're going to read the second one here in a minute. And then I'll leave cliffhangers just like I did with this one. And this book, if I finish the second one tonight, which is going to be, I hope I can, it will be going to the Candy Kitchen. Either way, if it goes tomorrow, it goes tomorrow. If it goes next time we go, it goes next time. But anyway, that's the destination for this one. But make sure you catch Going Cowboy Crazy by Katie Lane. And when I will just tell you, I rate Going Cowboy Crazy a 20. And to find out why, you have to read the book. So, stay tuned, and I will be right back to start in on Make Mine a Bad Boy by Katie Lane.